Good morning, everybody. Hi, everyone. Let's see. We're growing. Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
I'm going to apologize in advance. There's like jackhammering happening next door to me, and I hope it's not affecting your audio too much. Is it really loud?
It's fine for me. I don't hear it.
Here comes a truck. I may be muting from time to time just to spare you guys. I'm going to let a couple people just see. So nice to see people come back time after time. Hi, Isadora. So great. Okay, so today we are talking about executive functioning. And before we get into that, I have a couple announcements. So I'm Abby Schiller. I'm the CEO and founder of the Mother Company. Should be here any minute with my business partner, Sam Kurtzman-Counter, and Maggie Tancred, our Director of Development. If you have any questions today, you can ask them direct. If you want them to be private, you can ask them directly to Sam. And if you don't mind, you can just put them in the chat and I'll see them there. Sam will facilitate them to me. The Mother Company's mission is helping parents raise good people. We've been in existence for 10 years, and we have two parts to the company. One is our production side of the company, and we produce television shows that are meaningful for children from preschool to teen. And then we have this other side where we get to directly help and support parents with free sessions and one-on-one coaching and small group coaching to really help with your experience and sanity. In fact, starting this Sunday night, I just want to give a quick plug to a really amazing support group that we started a few months ago called Sunday Night Self-Care. We're starting up a new group. It's 5 Sundays, 30 minutes a night. It's only $10 a session, and it is a really wonderful practice to help align your head and your heart. Every Sunday night, deep breathing, a couple meditation, like a quick meditation and an intention setting. And I guide you through that, and it's gorgeous. People who were part of that community last time have all signed up again, and we're opening it up to, it's going to remain small, but we're going to just open it up to a few others. So I encourage you to sign up, and we'll send you the link after this. We are so grateful for this community of parents, especially to those of you who donate. Even $5 goes to help support us, our speakers, and the work that we're doing. So thank you. And I also just wanted to let you know that this session is being recorded, so we can share it with people after the talk and those who weren't able to join us today. So without further ado, I know you're all here to hear about executive functioning. Our speaker today is Nicole Kaplan. She's an educational therapist and founder of Empowered. And for over 2 decades, Nicole has seen clients in a private practice, collaborating with students and parents and teachers and learning specialists and psychologists to create a game plan tailored to her clients' specific academic and emotional needs. I love that. And she spoke to us before on educational choices when we were facing whether we should homeschool or send our kids to Zoom or whether we should do pods. And her insights were so wonderful that we have her back today. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me again.
Of course, you're so helpful. So let's start with just kind of the basic of what is, and I'm just going to keep putting myself on mute from time to time so you guys don't have to backhammering, but what is executive functioning?
Executive functioning is what I like to call the managerial part of our brain, like the assistant. And it controls all the things that we need to do in our everyday life to get things done. It is attached to the frontal lobe of our brain, and that is probably one of the last things to develop. So executive functioning skills are things that really need to be taught ahead of time. So the planning and executing of things can actually happen. Sometimes kids, and you'll see you're going to have varying degrees of abilities and inabilities for executive functioning. Kids with any attention issues, their frontal lobes are developmentally, they grow slower. So it makes those executive functioning skills harder to acquire.
Okay, cool. So, and so When do we start learning executive functioning, and how does it benefit us in general?
Executive functioning, you can start learning, from day one. And there's things that you can do. And just so you guys know, I will be posting on my website like an information sheet of things that can be done at different 8 stages, like 3 to 4, 5 to 7, 8 to 9, like what skills they can be working on. But all of these skills are things that we will be needing to model for our children so they can start learning them. When my kids were in preschool, for example, that's 2.5 years old, they come home from school, we put our lunchbox in the same place, our shoes go over here, any artwork goes over here. It's creating a system that of organization and planning ahead, getting our maybe making our lunch the day before to so we're ready for the morning, so we're starting to think ahead. And so all of these skills on some level can be incorporated from a very early age all the way through. It doesn't end. But and a good example of this is, I know many of you have probably walked into a preschool and you'll see someone playing with, for example, Hot Wheels and other cars. So I remember walking in and seeing some kids having all the blue ones, all the red ones, all the green ones, all the yellow ones. And then they'll mix them all up, and then they'll put all the emergency vehicles, all of the 2-wheel vehicles, all of the race cars, and then the trucks or things like that. So it's taking, for the younger ones, is taking the tangible stuff and being able to organize and plan. And as we get older, we have to do that with things that are intangible and inanimate objects and thoughts and ideas. So starting those skills young is really what helps us to develop into a better student, and being that better student helps us out in life later. So these skills aren't just for students. Like, we do this hopefully every day, and there are hard things. Even I have a hard time with certain things, and I have to come up with systems that work for me. And what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. So it's really problem solving, which is one of the skills, figuring out what's going to work for us.
I feel like so many of us are just kind of spiraling in a haze right now. And so many of us are so incredibly distracted or caught up in buffering or numbing or zoned out or unable to focus. All of that speaks to our executive functioning, correct? What is happening right now that is compromising?
Well, I think the overwhelmingness of everything, and like a lot of us have multiple children, and we're having to keep track of everybody's schedules. And sorry, my fan is on because it's really hot here. Keeping track of schedules and who has to be on what Zoom and at what time, and turning in this assignment for this child and that assignment. Oh, and this kid needs this. There's so many things. And as a parent, I think one of the best things, color coding is probably one of my favorite tools, and that helps us plan and execute. And I would have each of my kids in a different calendar, like different color in my calendar. And when they were old enough, I would share that calendar with them so they know what they had coming as well. So, initially I'm modeling the behavior and doing it for them. But for example, like my 15-year-old now, he's scheduling some of his own things. So he puts it in, and it will come to me, like it'll automatically come into my calendar. So, I know he has something now. And if it conflicts with something else, then I can call him, and then we can go from there.
I want to get into the specifics of how to be better at executive functioning. But before we do that, I want to understand a couple things just in the general category. So, a lot of kids are considered, like, we think of them as they're lazy or they're unmotivated or they're not disciplined. Is that often confused as an executive functioning problem?
Yeah. And that's where I have like one of my biggest issues. And I think it just makes me sad because maybe I relate to this as a kid, like often being told that I was lazy. I wasn't lazy. I worked really, really hard. However, I didn't have those skills. So I wasn't able. So the executive functioning skills give us the ability to perform up to our intellectual ability. So if I,
Nicole, say that one more time.
if I am lacking in executive functioning skills, but my intellectual ability is up here, but I don't know how to execute it and show it or turn things in, or I lose things, or whatever. I'm not showing anyone my intelligence. So
what does it look like? It looks like forgetting to turn in homework. It looks like forgetting jackets in schoolyards. It looks like
yeah, or you're walking by a pile of, or you open the dishwasher and take one cup out and you leave the rest for someone else. Like you're not thinking about. And it's not that you're selfish. It's not that you don't care about anybody else. And it's not in your frame. Like I leave stuff on my stairs for my kids to bring up. If it's been sitting downstairs, they walk by it all the time. And I'm like, ugh. But I also have to remember they're not doing it to make me angry. They're doing it because they just literally don't really see it.
Right. Okay. So they're not necessarily lazy. They're not necessarily unmotivated, stupid. They're not necessarily they're not necessarily selfish.
No.
These can all be signs of executive.
And it's so hard and so frustrating and it's maddening. And I would say, having a couple of children of my own with like ADHD stuff, I feel like, what was I going to say? That you have to, the approach to it is counterintuitive. Like I would say, most of us, like, it's not like we want to punish, but it's like, how much can you really deal with this? And you're like ready to pull out your hair, when in actuality, it's a matter of, gosh, this is really hard for you. And you keep doing the same thing over and over. And I know that you're meaning well, let me figure out a way to help you with that. And I think that, the executive functioning skills, like the kids are really hard on themselves when it comes to this, and they feel terrible when they keep forgetting or they're getting scolded for this and that. And it kind of perpetuates the whole thing rather than putting a stop to it. And I highly, highly recommend, obviously depending on the age of your kid, but to create like Post-it notes or something like, this is the list of things that I would like you to do today, and give them that visual so they have that.
Okay, let's get into exactly what it is. So,
okay,
can you go take us through one by one of the executive functioning skills?
Yes. Okay, so the first, and now just note that all of these skills, it's like one giant Venn diagram. They all overlap and work together. So if I'm describing one, it will probably most likely pull in other skills. So the first would be planning. And, we see planning, it could be something tangible planning, or it can be more thoughts planning. And that's the ability to figure out how we accomplish that goal, whether it be building a fort with a friend, or whether it be writing your thesis, okay? So then there's also organization, and that's the ability to develop and maintain a system that keeps materials and plans orderly. So in my home, everybody knows everything has a home. So create that space where you know where everything is. So I should say this first, like our greatest commodity is time, right? So we all want time to do the things that we want to do. And by really honing in on our executive functioning skills and being able to use them effectively and efficiently, we will gain more time for ourselves. And that's how I explain it when I'm working with kids. Like, well, what do you like to do? And like, they'll tell me, and like, well, we can, by doing certain things and doing it in a certain way, you're going to get more time to do those things. And it's going to be processed. You're going to process it in your brain more efficiently. Okay. So
I think that's actually a really important point, because we have to incentivize them to change their behaviors.
100%. They have to understand. And like the kids that I work with, a lot of kids I could say, oh, it's really important to XYZ. And they're like, okay, cool. And I find that the majority of the kids that I'm working with, they need to know why. And I get that. I needed to know why. Like, why is that important? And it puts it into context, and then we can really utilize it. So kids that ask why, I know that it gets kind of annoying sometimes. I had one of those too, but the why is really important, and it does help change the behavior. Okay, so we got the organization, and just know that the organization is going to look different for every child and at each age. And ever evolving, but it's important to really create whatever the system is, one that they are comfortable using and one that's going to work for them.
And Nicole, I want to go into detail on each of these once you name all 10.
Okay, sorry. Time management, task initiation, working memory, metacognition, self-control, attention, perseverance, and flexibility. So there you go. And
Okay.
I will have all those on the site that people can go and just have like a little checklist of what each of them are.
These kind of seem like the human functioning skills, any functioning skills for humans that you talked about: time management, self-control, attention, perseverance, flexibility, which is so important right now when everything is changing all the time. Working memory, I want to know more about that. Metacognition, I want to know more about. Let's start with planning. Okay. So what's the difference between, like, planning? It means planning your space, planning your time, planning
all of it,
how it's going to go.
Yeah. And what?
How do you help a child who is on a Zoom class, for instance, plan for a reading assignment?
So,
and you guys, everybody on the call, feel free to pipe in with your examples of what you have questions with. This is a conversation that is open to all of you.
Yeah. So basically, planning has to do for a reading assignment. So it depends on when it's due. So it's really important, this has to do with organization, to have some sort of academic planner. I've gone through all of them, and every one of my students prefers something a little different. So sometimes it's written, sometimes it's digital. But let's say they have to read, 3 chapters by Friday. Most of the kids are going to want to read 3 chapters on Thursday night. And that's not the best way to do it. So the best way, what I like to do is, okay, you've got 3 chapters. Let's break it down into 3 nights. The first night, you're just going to read 1 chapter. And I am going to ask them to take just a few little summary notes at the end. And you do that for 3 nights in a row, and you're done before it starts. We want to get them in the habit. All of this stuff is to set up habits for later too. So we want to get them in the habit of being able to plan ahead and not be rushing and not doing that stuff, because that's when careless mistakes are made. That's when our brain doesn't necessarily hold on to the information, and we're just getting through it just to get it done. And that's going to be counteractive when it comes time for a test, because they're going to have to go back and do all that stuff. So how I explain this stuff, and this is part of the planning, is you're ultimately going to have a test on this. What kind of information do we need to have for this test? We work backwards. This back planning, I think, is the best way to go. So you're going to need all of your vocabulary words on flashcards. You're going to need chapter summaries, and you're going to need quotes that have, their descriptions or whatever it is, right? Or analysis. So I like to do that as we're going through every chapter, because when it comes time to the end, you've got your little folder of all the work, or a folder on your computer, however it is that you've decided works best for you. And that information is there. You don't need to go back and reread, because, as I always say, rereading is not studying.
Why not?
Because you're just reading it to get the information. Studying is processing it, and the studying process should be happening all along. You shouldn't really have to study that much if you are processing the information as you go. So when the kids get all upset about, well, this is taking so much more time and this and that, it feels like it is at first, but when it comes time for the test, you really don't have to do very much.
So when kids are reading, they're highlighting, they're taking notes.
Annotating, yeah.
Then they review the notes to study.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's part of the planning, and that's part of organization. You can also take those notes to your teacher and say, hey, this is what I have. Is there anything I'm missing? And I'll tell you, as an educator, or people I've seen that, in classrooms, would be so apt to having a kid come in and say, hey, this is am I on the right track here? I'm going to take the time to help a kid who's put out that effort 1,000%.
Yeah. All right. So that's planning, space and time. And in terms of space, you're just talking about a working desk free of distraction.
Yeah. You should have the working desk. You should have all material. Like my desk here looks like an office. Like I have my stapler, my tape, my pencil sharpener, my Post-its, my pens, pencils, highlighters, tabs, all these different kinds of things. And we don't want our kids to have any excuse to have to get up to get this stuff, because it's so hard to pull them back. They say that once you're interrupted with something, it takes 20 minutes to recover. Me with ADHD.
Snacks and water.
Yeah.
Do you
I
set
have everything.
timers,
Yeah.
Nicole? Do you suggest timers?
I 1,000% believe in timers. Now, there are some kids that timers are distracting in the sense that when they get up for their break, pulling them back is hard. So you're going to have to gauge your own child. But I believe in timers 1,000%. Some kids' stamina for working 10 minutes versus 30 minutes is totally different. And that's totally okay. I'd rather them be on point and then have a quick brain refresher, whatever they need to do, jumping jacks, run around the house, whatever it is, get a snack, go to the bathroom, and come back and have their brain refreshed. Because if they're sitting for longer than they're capable of sitting for, then their brain function is just slowly like wandering off. So
Yeah.
timers are really good. And then slowly over time, just graduate that time into a little bit more.
Yeah. So you kind of pick it up minute by minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, but not every day.
So we've done planning, organization. Is there anything we've missed in organization? What about organizing your time, your thoughts, your assignments?
Okay, so I
Calendars.
believe in a calendar planner more than that's probably one of the biggest things that I am a proponent of. So, and I do it in a very specific way. And if that way doesn't work for a student, I figure out a way with them to get the same components in it. It's really important to not just write the assignment down, but you've got to back plan and break it up. I also like to have them estimate how much time each part is going to take. And if they say, well, God, this is going to take me longer than I wanted, but it's not due to them, how can I break it down even more so I'm not doing as much that night? Or I have soccer that night, so I have to do less on that night. So it's learning to budget and move that time around.
Mm-hmm.
And which is part of planning. So you have your time estimate of each, then you look at your full schedule. I'll add in as part of the organization and planning and time management that it's really nice. And I do have one of these on my site just to get like a weekly chart and just kind of block in what everybody's schedule is. And I would when COVID first started, my daughters were home for college and I literally had everybody have their own chart so we could just see who's going to be where and when. So it's nice, especially for the younger ones, to have the visual to say, okay, this is where my free time is. So I know X amount, according to this day, I've got this amount of homework. So I'll do that here. Then I have this time for me later.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
yeah. Is this a digital thing or do you have like a whiteboard in the hallway or chalkboard in the hallway?
I did a paper pen one for the kids to fill out. I also have a whiteboard, which looks nice, but I don't use it as much.
I think it depends on the family because some families swear by their
depends.
Sunday night planning of the week, and
which I think is really great that they sit down and do it together. My kids are older, so just who knows? I don't know.
I think
but
different.
Every family is different, and whatever works for the family is great.
So we were kind of going into the time management.
Yeah. So it's about planning your time, sticking to that time, being aware and cognizant of your time. For kids that have a really hard time focusing and staying on task, try a metronome app. Sometimes that really helps. It's just that constant, there's studies on it. I can't explain why, but I read it and have tried it and it's worked with some of the kids. So it helps them stay on task. But it's also, as soon as you see them start to wander, just say, oh, it's a break, let's go do that, and then come back. Because bringing them back is really, once they're gone, it's like you've almost kind of lost them.
So they have breaks in Zoom school, and my son is 9 and he thought his breaks at Zoom school were time for video games. And I'm like, no, you have to go to the bathroom, you have to get a snack, you have to stretch your body, you have to go outside. What is like an optimal break?
Well, here's what I would probably do is I would take either a little whiteboard or a Post-it note on the computer and just write like Zoom break options, and then have like drink of water, grab a snack, go to the restroom, go give my dog a hug, whatever like little things it is, and just say, you get to pick whichever one of these you want, or you can make that list together and then give him some kind of autonomy in picking out which one that he wants to do. Yeah.
We have a question. What are your thoughts on music while you study or do homework?
It depends on music, but I am totally fine. I mean, I'm fine with it. I think if I were to hear like really fast rapping, like for me, like I wouldn't be able to process any of the information coming in. But I have no problem with, you know, kids probably won't like this classically, like I used to like George Winston, the pianist. So I would listen to that. Yeah, just chill. I've been listening to crickets on my Alexa lately. So
because I'm a little ADHD, I find like it's helpful to have something, and maybe that's what
1000%. Yeah. Any ADHD stuff to keep people on task. It's good to have something like that on the outside. I really believe in like these bouncy chairs or like the wobble seat. Chewing gum is good for kids with ADHD or any attention issues. And I say this stuff for kids with ADHD, but truthfully, it's anyone with attention stuff because we can all have attention stuff, but not have ADHD. Mm-hmm. So, but these tactics or, you know, strategies will work with anyone that's being distracted.
So time management, is it about anticipating the time it's going to take and then doing it in that time?
Yes, and not, yeah, and it's like getting like sort of a picture of, like, let's say a pizza, right? So let's say your math is going to take up one slice. Where in your schedule do you have time for one slice? So it's kind of like this visual sort of puzzle that we're putting together. So that's why, like, when I'm working with someone, I know this sounds strange, but I will do things like puzzles. So you can start to see how things fit together and how little pieces make up a bigger part and things like that. So it's those kinds of skills. And that's why, you know, preschool play is so important because this is the beginning to all of these skills.
Yeah. We have a question saying, actually there are two questions from Michelle who said, how to get kids engaged when they are simply just hating Zoom school. Oh, sorry, that was Rachel. And then Michelle asked, my teenage daughters would say you are giving me no freedom with all the reminders and suggestions, I guess, of the Zoom breaks. How do you handle the teenage rebellion?
Teenagers? Well, I just got to a point, you know, it's interesting. You know, they say the cobbler's children have no shoes, right? So the advice that I would give to clients would be, you know what? It's time to back off. It's really painful and they're going to learn and they're going to fail on their own. And this is the time for us to teach them those lessons. Did I necessarily do it with my own kids? Not initially, but starting to see sort of what the repercussions of trying to get them to do things when they didn't want to, it wasn't working. I literally backed off and I'm like, this is on you guys. And I said, I'm here for suggestions when you want it to happen or when you need ideas, let me know, I'm here. But I don't want to fight with you. I want to be your mom. I want to love you. I want to be with you. And so this isn't working. It's hard.
One of the things that I have found successful, because I also have a teenager, is I just have like a bunch of snacks available in the fridge and then I let go.
Totally. It's about letting go. They have to make these decisions on their own. And, you know, my daughter, I have twin girls who are 20 in college, and one of them, you know, was talking about like, gosh, you know, mom, she was at Berkeley. She's like, I really wish I listened to you more. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I just like balancing my time and all these things. And I just, it's really hard. I'm like, yeah, it's really hard. And then my other daughter on her first day of having to do laundry, she's like, there's so many buttons and so many colors and so many different choices for water. And it's like, I totally did a disservice to my kids and thinking I was going to be this great mom and take care of everything. And there's a fine line. And I think that the only way to develop these skills is to look at what each brain development stage is and ask yourself or find out. There's a good book called it'll come to me in a minute, I promise. Now it's gonna bug me. I'll think of it. But to know what a person is capable of at that developmental stage and really start letting them take over some of these things. Like I remember before the girls went to college, like one of my biggest fears were having to make appointments for myself on my own, right? Because my mom did it for me. And so like their senior year, I'm like, oh, you need a haircut? Here's Kate's number, give her a call. Oh, you need a doctor's appointment? Okay, here's their number. So it's really starting to it's really helping them to take over the things that they're capable of doing. And I finally sat down and with all my kids, I said, listen, I'm always here for you, and I'm always gonna guide you or help problem solve with you, because problem solving is, you know, one of the biggest things on here. Or I don't know, is that one of the, well, problem solving has to do with all this, but if I know that you're capable of doing something, I'm gonna have you do it.
Yeah, and I think that so often as parents, we think we're doing our children a service by doing it for them, or we're controlling how we want it to get done for them, so we just do it. And it's our job to really let go and let them fail.
They have to figure out who they are. Yes, yeah.
Yesterday, we tried to implement a cleaning situation, and my son is a terrible sweeper, and I just have to let him be a terrible sweeper until he gets to be a better sweeper.
I know. And if you go into, oh, I just thought of the book, Yardsticks.
Yardsticks. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe Sam can put the link.
I think that is on my site too.
Okay, great. I want to go back to the question saying how to get the kids engaged when they are simply hating Zoom school, age 12 and 15.
Well, that's middle school, high school. They're gonna hate it. They're gonna complain about it, and
it's a lot. I have to say, it's a lot.
It's
and
a
some
lot.
of the teacher voices are really hard to listen to, and people,
yeah,
you know, their classmates are unmuting and being disruptive, and just it's distracting. It's just a lot. I would feel like you just need to empathize with them and just say, we don't have a choice. This is what we're doing, and let's figure out how we can make the most of it.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I mean, I really think
that the quality time off Zoom is quality.
Yeah, I mean, they're not wanting to be on it because it's not social and it's not fun, and they're back in school. I mean, there's going to be complaints anyways about school. Let's not forget how it was back in the day, right? Way back in the day. But there, you know, it does suck. And I think you're right. We have to empathize, and this is what's going on in the world. How can we make it better for ourselves? Like, you still want to go to college or whatever it is, like you still want to go on to school. We still have to learn, how is this going to work? And it's really going to be like a family conversation, I think.
So let's keep going with these skills because I want to make sure we get through them. So we've talked about planning, organization, time management. What's task initiation?
Task initiation is the ability to be able to start something rather than like getting paralyzed and be like, I don't know what to do.
Okay.
So, and that's being able to plan. It's being able to, for example, like an assignment, or, you know, having to go pay the bills that day or deal with something with insurance. It's like, it's a pain. It's hard. You know, it's going to take long. You know, you're going to be sitting on the phone for a long time. But once you can sit down and make a plan of what you need to do to solve this problem, you do it. But it's about putting things off.
So it's really also about keeping a commitment to yourself.
Yeah, it's the ability to independently start tasks when you need to. And it allows you to just begin something when you don't want to, rather than putting off. It's like procrastination.
How not to procrastinate. Sorry. I hope you know that person.
Yes, I do.
How not to procrastinate.
Yeah. How not to procrastinate. I mean, that is really difficult. And okay, so what I like to do is when your child does something really good, and there goes a dog. When your child does something, let's say really good, I relate everything back to, how does that feel inside? Like, what does it feel like to you when you look at, you were really successful with that, you did XYZ, whatever it was, you know how to blah, 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 you know, you praise them with whatever. And they're like, well, it makes my heart feel warm or whatever. We try to get them to identify what that feeling is, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then when they're putting something off and then the night before it's due and they're totally anxious, how does that feel inside your body? Mm-hmm. Get them to identify with that feeling, like, you know, my chest feels really tight, or I have a headache and everything's spinning so fast and I can't stop, whatever it is that they describe. And then you'll say, gosh, remember that time when you were describing how good it felt to turn this in on time and how your heart felt warm or things were light or whatever? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember. Okay, well, we have a choice. So let's learn from this. So we talk about the different feelings in our body. How would you rather your body feel? Because sometimes we can't like really identify with our thoughts, but we can it's more tangible with what our body's feeling, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a great conversation starter on task initiation or procrastination, to say, okay, this is how it felt when you planned ahead and you did it ahead of time. This is how it felt when you put it off. how do you want to be feeling in your life?
Mhm.
And you can
I wonder
take the
if
conversation for that.
sometimes feel so overwhelming, like a task might feel so overwhelming that you can't see the first step of it. And so
1,000%.
does it help to break it down into steps?
1,000%. That's what it's all about. So the whole idea of you get the whole versus the part. So you've got this whole picture of this massive project that's due.
Mm-hmm.
And that people get paralyzed. Where the hell do I start, right? So the first thing I do is like, let's get that sheet out that gives us all the instructions of what you're supposed to do. And I literally go through and we get rid of any words that don't matter. And then we highlight what are the things that the teacher is specifically expecting of you and wanting you to do. Because in school, until mostly through high school, we're really in school to learn to follow directions, which is executive functioning. That's what they're trying to do. They just don't do it in a way that I think it should be done, but which is fine. Because, if you think about it, when we go and we try to write this, like we get an assignment for a really cool paper and then we're like, oh, I have this great idea and I'm going to take it here and there. I didn't follow the directions. I'm not going to do well, no matter how great my idea is. The teachers and professors want to see you follow the directions.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I literally went to UCLA and I turned in my first paper and I got a D-, and I was like, what? And that's when I learned, like, if I just follow the syllabus or the directions for the paper step by step by step, I'll do great. And that's what it was. So I didn't get to be as creative as I wanted, but I figured out the system, which is an executive functioning skill that will take me further in life.
Mm-hmm. Debatable. We can talk about education today and
yeah,
directions versus creative thinking and what's going to serve our children.
Well, right. Well, that was the institution that I was in.
Yeah.
So
got it. You got to play by the rules.
To be successful. Exactly. For me to be successful there.
Right. So maybe like 10-minute chunks, like let's break it down into tasks and let's just put 10 minutes towards the first task and see where you go, or 20 minutes towards the first.
Yeah, I think that, these projects are usually long-term projects. Break them down into days. Do 20 minutes a day. Like writing, to me, I love working on writing with students. Like, it's my favorite. It's a formula, and most kids understand formulas and systems. So, day one is all I'm doing is filling in a graphic organizer of a web with my ideas. Day two is an outline, taking those ideas. Day three is, well, it depends on the age, you're adding quotes and then descriptions or not. And then you have your rough draft, then you have your final, then you turn it in. And you literally are only doing like 15 to 20 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. Whereas rather than sitting down Thursday night and be like, oh, I have this paper to do and I don't know how to do it. And I don't know where to start. And then all of our thoughts are cut off anyways. Managing overwhelm
and anxiety and your thoughts around an assignment, I think, is also a really wonderful skill. That's not, maybe it's part of, let's keep going. So is that maybe self-control? What is
it's planning and time management, because if you know that you have the time to do it, and it's the idea of like not avoiding, it's the planning, being aware, making a plan. Because for all of us, when we make a plan for something, it seems feasible versus, oh my God, I just have to go and do this.
Yeah.
It's planning and breaking down.
Action, right? You have to start taking action.
That's the task initiation. Exactly.
Okay. So task initiation is taking the action. Self-control.
Self-control. Do you want to do working memory next, or do you want to go to self-control?
Oh, I have it off. Working memory.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
I don't have the same order.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Which would you like?
Let's do working memory.
So working memory is the mental process that allows us to hold on to information. So it's like passive memory versus active memory. And it's about getting that information in a way that's going to stick and being able to retrieve that information. That is a harder one. That is something that is really taught through the next one, metacognition. And that is, metacognition is being aware of what you know and using that information to help you learn, and being aware of how you learn. Because somebody that is not a visual learner, I'll put it in the positive, somebody that is a visual learner is going to do better studying for vocab words when they can see a picture of maybe what the word looks like, versus having to hear it or to memorize some words. So, like for example, I had a student who was studying for history final. She wanted to study with a friend, and I said, great, how does your friend study? And she goes, well, she does this and this. And I said, well, what kind of learner are you? And she tells me. I go, do those two things work? She goes, well, I want to study with her. I said, you can, but you're going to have to go back and study this again, because you do realize that it's not going to work for you. Like it's not gonna be a waste of your time, but you will have to keep going back and doing more.
So flashcards for visual learners. What about auditory learners? Audio.
I mean, it totally depends on what the subject is, but like for auditory, like I'm a big believer in books on tape for audiobooks, like 1,000%. I think any child should do it. I do it, but like it just helps them. It takes the pressure off having to sound out a word or having it be, fluent. And so they're able to comprehend usually better. And it'll not only that, for me, it's about the time management. So I know, like when I'm working with a student, that this chapter is going to take 15 minutes to read and 5 minutes to write a little summary. There, it's 20 minutes. That's it.
We're getting questions about time blindness and kids that aren't able to feel time. At what age should children be able to budget their time?
I think it's an ever-going process, like a ever learning experience. Like that same thing, like, I don't know, I was taught, and I have a feeling you were too, Abby, when the kids are little and like you were to go away, you're like, I'm coming back in 2 sleeps, not in 48 hours, like you'll see me in 2 sleeps. So you've got to make it relative to something they do understand. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's going to look a little bit different for everyone, or for each child.
I would also say this. I'm no expert in this, but from my own experience, I think that kids should get their timing wrong in order to hone it and get it right as they continue. They'll realize that 20 minutes is plenty of time to do some things and not enough time to do anything else.
Right. So I think it's really important. That's why timers are important. The other thing is we can make it into a game. Like we have to drive to the market. How long do you think it's going to take to get to the market? 3 hours, you're going to get one of those, or like 2 minutes. So we're like, okay, let's leave the house. Let's set our timer and let's see. Start doing things like that. How long does it take us to go upstairs, grab our book or whatever or take a bath, whatever, and then come back? And one of the things that I do is is like a whole chart of like kids' activities where they would go through and write the estimate of how long they think it is, and then they get to go home and try it and see where they are. So it's really just starting them to be aware of real time.
I love that idea. I've not thought of that, but you're essentially teaching them how to estimate time. Mm-hmm. And by the way, there are some people who are just completely time blind. I think my mother's one of them.
Yes, yeah, there are. And, we all have a deficit, and that could be hers.
Okay, so metacognition is the process of learning it and being able to repeat it, yes?
Working
memory.
Working memory.
Okay.
Metacognition is knowing what kind of learner you are. So it's visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. We call it VAC, right? So and it doesn't mean you're one and not the other. You are a blend of different things. And sometimes, like, if I have to learn some kind of computer program or something, I need someone to literally show me. Like, don't tell me, don't make me read it. I'm not going to figure it out. You got to show me. But if I need to follow directions on something different, like just give me a list with bullet points, I'll go down, it's done, So it's really learning what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses, helping your child identify with that, so it's like that, like people will start shooting off, hey mom, don't forget to do XYZ. I'm like, you know what, just go write it on a list and give it to me, I'll take care of it. But I'm not gonna hold on to it.
That's good modeling too. We have a question. Yeah. How do you figure out what kind of learner your kids are?
Well, a lot of people have academic or the neuropsych testing done, and that's one way to do it. But you can also tell, like, if they're struggling somewhere, I think it's being aware of finding out how the teacher is teaching things, how they're being expected to do things. It's a trial and error. Sometimes, a kid will say things like, I don't want to read that, I'd rather watch it or whatever. Well, that sounds like a video thing, but like, so let's say you're cooking in the kitchen, right? Are you wanting to read the directions? Are you going to want to watch a YouTube on it? Are you going to have someone tell you as you're doing it? Like, just start being aware of the different kinds of modes that it can be done in and what they respond best to. And it can, like I said, it can look different in different areas. I have students who are incredible, like they express themselves incredibly verbally, but when it comes to written, it's much more difficult. So a compensating strategy for that is we'll do like a drag-in dictation where they can actually dictate what their essay needs to be, and then we can go through and fix it. But their thoughts are more linear and sequential when they're talking about it than having to get it onto paper or type it.
Is it even important to figure out what kind of a learner your child is, or can they just find out what's working for them in the moment?
Well, I think if you can find out what's working for them in the moment, and it tests tried and true as far as like you're doing well, you did well on the test, then that works, right? So it's great until it doesn't work. And if something doesn't, so let's say someone comes to me with a neuropsych testing done and it says they're this kind of learner. It doesn't mean that that's all they are. It just means that's how they're responding, and that's a good way to approach it. But we can use that skill to develop the other parts of it as well. So it's not like you have to know, but if it's that saying, you keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome, the definition of insanity. And it's like, so if something needs to be different, then maybe try a different modality. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Got it. I want to go back to a question. It says, what do you recommend for kids who rush through assignments and do math in their heads? We tell them to slow down, show work, etc., but they just don't. Not sure how to get through to them.
I think that natural consequences are probably one of the best things as far as, I think a teacher should require all students to do their math, write it fully out. So, I mean, it depends on the age, it depends on so many things, but I feel like,
I had a child who never read directions, and the natural consequence was that she would constantly get low grades for just missing chunks of the assignment.
Yeah.
It corrected itself.
Yeah, that's right. So if you're not reading directions, or you're not doing what you're supposed to do,
but by the way,
yeah.
This was also a sign of an auditory processing disorder. So I don't know, Elise is the person asking the question, but I would not have thought that. I thought that she was just rushing through, but it was actually a disorder. It was actually, we had to, her school noticed that this was a consistent thing. And
well, that's what I was going to say. If it's consistent and a teacher should be aware, they should let you know.
But it's really hard with Zoom. So you might want to do some digging into some of those. Yeah, the boys have ADHD.
So wait, right, I was just looking at this. So they're now in 6th grade, the boys have ADHD. Where's the first part of that question?
It's what I just asked. What do you recommend?
Okay, I was just
rush through assignments and do their math in their heads. I think
I would actually talk to the teacher and tell the teacher to tell them they have to redo it, or that's not gonna count as credit in 6th grade. They have to start being held accountable. We want to take the parents away from this as much as possible. We don't want to be the parent on them being like, show your work, show your work, show your work. It doesn't mean anything coming from us as parents. And I would get the teacher to say, listen, I can't count this if you're not giving me what I'm asking for. And that's part of the following directions too.
I feel like 6th grade is such a pivotal year because they go from this kind of young elementary into older and higher expectations. And that's when the auditory processing disorder was caught for my daughter. I think that it's just a great year to be aware that it's not necessarily a personality quirk, that there may be underlying things. And
for sure. And I will say this.
Yeah,
kids that have high intellectual ability that haven't had to work very hard in elementary school to show their success come to a crossroads in middle school when they haven't developed their study skills or their executive functioning skills because they haven't had to, because their natural intelligence has taken over. So in middle school is when it hits like, oh God, I don't have the skills. I'm smart enough, but I don't have the skills to show what it is that I need. And that's when I find so many kids, 6th graders, coming to me because they're not able to do what they need to do. And it's not because they're not smart.
Yeah, it's a pivotal year also just in terms of human development, brain development. and expectations.
And bodies.
I want to just quickly go through the rest of these and then get to people's questions. So we have left self-control, attention, perseverance, and flexibility.
Okay. So self-control is the ability to regulate yourself in your emotions. So we all know that that is hard for all of us. I do believe in mindfulness, and I believe in breath work and things like that. There are other strategies that I work on with kids, and really to be able to get them to identify when they're feeling out of control. It's really that feeling in the body, like, how does that feel? Like you're getting really anxious right now. And we talk about breathing and the oxygen going to different parts of our body and what that oxygen does to our body and our brain, and it helps us relax. I'm talking fast because
Nicole, but I would also say that self-control is allowing for urges. So every time you want to procrastinate and get up and have a snack or go to the bathroom, grab water, take a walk, or do 10 minutes more of video, self-control is about processing that, that urge, right?
Yeah, it's being aware of it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you want to be able to, it's positive self-talk. It's being able to, and I guess it kind of goes back on to like that task initiation, doing the things that are best for you and right for you, and not giving into every impulse.
Okay, let's talk about attention.
That's obviously our big one, the ability to focus for a different amount of time, and that's why I think the timer is phenomenal, because everyone does have a different ability in length that they can sit and do things.
And in terms of perseverance,
that's not giving up. Like I remember I recently had, the beginning of COVID as well, had a student who had to do a test online and literally got to one question and literally just stopped. I'm like, okay, well, let's think this through. Like, what do you do? Well, I don't know it. And I'm like, well, what could you do? And he couldn't even think of, well, I'm going to go on, or I'm going to go look in my book for this answer, or just those ideas. So just stop. So it's persevering and thinking of what can I do to get this done? It's problem solving,
It's also allowing for hard, uncomfortable feelings and to keep going. You just keep going.
And being okay with, okay, it's okay if I don't get it 100% right. It's okay.
Yeah. And then finally, flexibility.
Which is a big one for our kiddos these days, who have had to be very flexible. And I was actually just talking to a group of friends, we're definitely going to be raising our kids with grit these days, which is a great attribute to have. It's hard for these kids to be flexible. And I think the best thing that we can do is show our kids our flexibility and to be able to roll with it, because it's hard enough for them with their little minds that are not, developed like ours. And imagine it's hard for us. So it's really hard for them.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a generation of people who are just instinctively have learned how to roll with it. They've had to.
It's been an incredible lesson for me. I will say that, because I was always much more rigid than I am now. Now I'm kind of whatever.
So I want to get to the questions.
Okay.
We have, sorry, let me scroll up for a second. Any suggestions on ways to positively frame to kids that they'll be taking a more active role in creating and managing their schedule workload? Otherwise, it turns into constantly nagging. They get annoyed. I get frustrated. This person has second and third grade, all virtual school.
Okay, can you read the first part? Sorry, I'm really visual.
Any suggestions on ways to positively frame?
Taking more active role.
That's all right.
Sorry. Okay. I would just, I would talk about, I like to do this meeting at the beginning every so often in the family. Okay, this is what we're going to hunker down now. And we're going to talk about, this is the way that it's going to look. Okay, now you're in, what'd you say, second and third grade? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're now in second grade. These are the things that second graders or third graders can be responsible for. And this is how it's going to look. It's going to be maybe a little challenging at first, but I will help you through it. But pretty soon, guess what? You're going to be able to do this on your own.
So what should a second grader be able to do? Can you go give us some examples? They should be able to log on to their own Zoom. They should be able to initiate their own assignment.
I mean, second grade, let's see. I think for second grade, I think I mean, it's just such a tough situation. I think someone needs to be able to oversee, if possible, can be able to make sure that they're on and staying on task. They should be able to sit and do it. Doesn't mean that all of them are gonna. Like, everybody should know their own child and what they're capable of. Like, I have a client who's a 5th grader whose mom has to be there the whole time. But then I have others who are in 3rd grade, sorry. And
we're all moms, and we're all parents here, so it's all good.
You're going to be on a video. It totally depends. I would like to I mean, I have a student in 5th grade who's got to download pictures and upload them, and oh my God, sorry.
You're not the first. You're not the first. The questioner says a 2nd grader with ADHD, anxiety, and frustration intolerance. Those are all so related.
Oh, I mean, they're all, yeah. I just think that I think that, creating a picture of what it's going to look like, so the least amount of surprises as possible. Obviously with someone, ADHD, anxiety, and all that, I think it's important to have really important, like, conversations with teachers and hoping that they all know what's going on and figuring out ways for this person to for this teacher to be able to work with the child so they can access the curriculum. That's the question. Is my child able to access the curriculum? And if they can't, we have to problem solve around that.
Access mentally or physically?
Both.
Do you suggest kids work in their rooms or in open spaces if possible?
If possible, open spaces. I mean, mine's a little bit crazy right now. Someone's going to walk by again.
It's okay.
But I prefer spaces, but I'm also working with a girl who sits in her family room, and, the dogs are running by, or another sister comes in and is like, hey. And so, I'm one-on-one, so I'm fine with it if they're in their room because I can keep them together and focused. But for a parent that has multiple kids that is juggling everyone and having to watch, I would probably get them in one room if possible, separated if possible, with headphones on if possible.
And they think that open spaces are better just so that parents can have an eye on the fact that kids are. This reminds me of the days when I would proctor like some tests, and like, you just want to make sure that they're not on. I mean, my son, who's probably back there right now, is like in his chemistry class, but he's got like Minecraft going, and it's like, I'm not cool with it, but I'm in the open space right now. So, we do the best we can do. Okay. I want to ask another question. Is there a quick plan to help build attention in tweens and teens?
I would take the executive functioning stuff. The attention is hard. I mean, that is developmental. That's the development of their frontal lobe. So we can't like make that go faster. But being organized and planning and role modeling all of that. And it's like, for example, like being efficient. Like when we were running around doing errands, I would kind of create my plan of like the list of places I had to go, and then kind of create the plan in my head based on location. So I was efficient with my time. Those are the kinds of things that I think are great to share with your kid as you're planning something, or like, even in the market, or like that kind of thing. Like, I'm writing my list. Well, I tend to write my list in sections of what the market would be. And so I'm splitting things up. So then I give them my list that I've created, and they can write things under their section. So they start to categorize things like that. So all of the like little skills that we can incorporate and answer the why, even if they're not asking, brings it to their attention, which helps them to be able to focus ultimately more. But it really is time. And listen, I have two 20-year-olds, and sometimes I'm like, I'm over here, like, come on. And it just happens. And it's hard right now. It's really hard right now.
Nicole, we've got 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Is there anything that you want us to fully embrace as a takeaway?
I think that, and I feel like this is probably one of the takeaways from our last talk, but really role modeling and being the model of how we want our kids to be. So if we want them to be able to sit and pay attention to something, we've got to do the same. the organization and planning things out, they're only going to learn it by what they see in the house. You know, educators can do so much and I can do so much, but why would a child want to do something that I would suggest when their own parent doesn't do it?
Yeah. Can I ask you one more question that comes
Of
from
course.
a listener? I'm wondering, this person is wondering if it's detrimental, if it's distracting for kids to have their self view on Zoom. Do you advise clients around that? So she said,
To see themselves.
my son's teachers are letting kids choose whether their cameras are on. I have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I think his camera should be on so the teacher can get to know him and keep him engaged. On the other hand, if it's on, it's exhausting and hard for an ADD kid. Thoughts?
You know, it's funny you say that because here I am with ADD and I do have a hard time with the distractions. I do think it's really important for a teacher to put the name with the face. I don't know, is there any way to do it? So I was trying to figure it out if I could just see you and I versus all the other people. So somehow I did, oh my God. Can you hear the barking?
I can, but it's okay. So
okay.
Just
Okay.
finish your sentence and then actually we need to wrap up.
Okay, so I do think if there's a way to figure out how it's just seeing me and you, which I figured out on here, and I don't know what I pushed, then that's okay, because I feel like I'm having a conversation with you and not all the other people on the side, which is helpful for me. Not because I don't want to see people, but just it's distracting for me. For that person, I would go back and forth, maybe. But really, if the kid can't pay attention doing it, then take off their face and then try to schedule a little FaceTime with the teacher and have the teacher know why that you're choosing to do that.
Thank you for that answer. We're going to send the recording of this, and can you give us the organization timeline for writing, Nicole, and we'll include that?
The what? I didn't hear you.
The organization timeline for writing. Do you have the organization timeline for writing? You said how to break down an assignment for writing.
Oh, yeah. Basically,
no, we'll send it. We'll send it in.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody that was helpful for you. I hope to see you Sunday night for a little self-care, 30 minutes. We'll send you that link as well. Nicole, really appreciate all of your time and expertise. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everyone.